Hey, what's up, everybody? Rob Gill, Epic Financial Strategies. And today, we're going to talk about how the elections affect the economy and tax planning. Okay, once again, get your cameras ready, grab your pen and paper, be in a peak state. The information you're going to receive today is for free and it's world class. And I have with me none other than America's accountant, AKA the best Buddha in the business, AKA Dan Geltrude. What's up, Dan? How you doing?
Hey, Rob.
Once again, thank you for being here. I love these conversations I have with Dan because they're so educational. And let's talk about it. You know, we have an election coming up and we don't know who's going to win. And how do you plan?
Well, it's really hard, Rob. Listen, elections matter, so everybody really needs to know about that. And it's not just the presidential election that matters. That's what everybody's focusing in on. But we have elections going on throughout Congress. We have elections happening at state levels. So all of this matters as far as what your planning needs to be. These things affect the economy. They affect taxes, and that's what people base their financial decisions upon. So you can't ignore these things. You got to stay up to date. Now, I want to make one point here. People should not be focusing in on the personalities of the candidates. That doesn't matter, although that's what we see on the news. People need to focus in on what are the policies, specifically, what are the tax policies, because the tax code picks winners and losers. And without planning, you end up on the losing end. And that's not what it's about for guys like you and I, Rob.
Absolutely.
We're talking about turning people into winners, financial winners.
So when we talk about financial freedom, financial winners, great. I love that, by the way. Financial winners, everybody. What I love about that is how can people really, besides the news, and it's tough. They got, Facebook, they're going to see what they see. How can they get educated on why and who they should vote for, not only just in the general election, but it sounds like just as importantly as all these other elections that you're talking about? What would you tell the good folks out there if you had 2 minutes to share with them what they need to pay attention to?
It's really difficult, Rob, because there's so much disinformation out there. And on top of that, everything is slanted towards a side. So besides listening to America's Accountant, you really should take the time to go to the websites of the candidates and read about what they're proposing, and then evaluate how realistic these things are. You have to be an educated voter. And then the other thing you want to do is make sure you're finding balance in what you're reading and what you're listening to. I think everyone realizes that there are certain news outlets that lean left, certain that lean right, and you want to have a balance of those two because the truth probably lies in the middle. So it's up to you to become educated, to understand what is best for your financial picture, for your world, to be the financial winner. That's what you should focus in on possibly who's the right candidate for you to vote for.
So if we could play in the world of hypotheticals, right? If you're now talking to your clients, business owners and or individuals, corporate executives, and is there a certain way to plan if Trump wins versus is there a certain way to plan if Biden wins? How do you look at that?
It's a great point, Rob, because there kind of has to be two plan Bs, right? Who wins the election? And it's not about who's in the White House. It's which way Congress swings as well. Because if you have whoever wins the presidency has his party in power in Congress, then you're going to see real change, no matter who that is. If things are split, you probably are going to have a lot of stagnant or lack of activity in that situation. So yes, you have to base it upon what does a Trump presidency look like? What does a Biden presidency look like? And start laying things out to say, this is what Trump is proposing. This is what Biden is proposing. How do we position ourselves to be prepared in either case? And that's challenging, but Rob, that's what we do.
Yes.
And that's how we keep our clients as financial winners, no matter who's in the White House.
Yes. So that's a great point. So for all the folks out there, listen, Dan just nailed it when he said, go on the websites, understand what business you're in, understand what you're looking to accomplish, keep personalities out of the equation. So Dan, when we talk about Congress and who's in the White House being on the same page, it does seem like there's more of a fluidity, right? But those are like snapshots. I think when Trump got in, that lasted maybe a year for him. And then once, the Democrats came into Congress it seemed like that's where there was a lot of, push back and forth and the politics came into play. It's been my experience that, politicians, especially career politicians, they don't pay payroll tax. They don't own companies. Some of them may, but the point is they don't understand what you're going through in the real world every day in your small business, or if you're working for a company and you're working out of your house. What do you say about people that have a job, but they're also entrepreneurial in nature, and being able to kind of get that second career started? Do you have any thoughts on what they should look at?
I think what you always have to look at, Rob, is where things are going with the tax code. That really matters. And as far as also, I want to go back to one point about who you should consider for your vote. Take a look at, for example, what business organizations like the Chamber of Commerce, who they're supporting, because they're always going to be pro-business in their approach. So those, again, are things that you want to pay attention to. But as far as if you're a business owner, you want to really pay attention to changes that are proposed to that tax code. Because again, it's not about how much you make. It's about how much you keep. That's what really matters. That's your principle to invest, to live on, and to have the lifestyle that you desire.
I love it. And by the way, Dan, this has been such a wild year. PPP has to be addressed by the end of this year, as we're trying to figure out, because it's safe to say that we're not going to know who the president is on November 4th.
Yes.
So as we're figuring out who the president is going into Thanksgiving, hypothetically, we also want to be able to address to the good folks out there, how can they make sure their PPP money is done the right way where they don't have to pay it back?
So primarily, if you look at the PPP money that you've received, you want to really make sure, just as kind of like a thumb measure, that you're using it for payroll. That was the primary gist of where that program was going. So if you want to stay safe, make sure you've allocated that money to use to pay your employees, and that's the best guidance that you can follow without getting into all the details, Rob.
Okay. And as far as, let me just go back to the election, and if we are in a litigious event with the election, what does that look like?
Well, that looks like a mess. But at the same time, we have to realize that may very well be a reality. So believe it or not, if there is no president by the time we get to Inauguration Day, if we haven't been able to figure out who the president is, then the president is the Speaker of the House. So that could be Nancy Pelosi. So what does a Pelosi presidency look like for some period of time? And maybe that's now a third plan B.
Oh my God.
Nobody's thinking about that one.
Wow.
But it's certainly possible. And listen, 2020 has been that kind of year that could spill into 2021, where the Speaker of the House becomes the president for some period of time.
We may not want this video to go out because we may not want anyone to have any ideas. I never thought of that. So, wow. So we have some beautiful challenges ahead. Once again, folks, it's important that you're creating Plan Bs, and your accountant is speaking with your insurance agent, your estate attorney, your trust officers, your fiduciaries, and vice versa. I think when you have everybody on the same page, good things begin to happen as far as your decision making. And Dan, it seems like right now there's a lot of maybe status quo. It's don't step too much in this direction or that direction until we have more clarity. Now, I know you're not a let's call it a Pulitzer Prize winning economist. But with that being said, can we speak a little bit about the printed money and the effects on the stock market, and from what you see.
So what I think we're seeing here, Rob, is you have the federal government printing money. Now, the crazy part of what's happening here is when that has happened historically, we've had inflation. But 2020 being as it is, we're not having inflation. So what's happening now is the federal government is continuing to print more money. That cannot continue forever. So what I see here is the potential for rapid inflation, hyperinflation to hit this economy at some point in time. Now, as far as the stock market goes, Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, has really committed for the foreseeable future to keep interest rates low. That is going to continue to fuel the stock market. So I see that the stock market, once we have certainty about who the presidency is going to be occupied by, and I don't think it might not matter all that much whether it's Trump or Biden.
I agree with that.
I think the stock market continues to rise.
I agree with that. I do agree with that. I think that, and by the way, this is just our opinions, but I agree with that. When you speak of hyperinflation, though, what does hyperinflation look like? High interest rates?
Well, not high
cost of living.
Yeah, it's really primarily cost of living, because as you are flooding the market with more dollars, dollars are simply worth less. So, in an example, all of a sudden a gallon of milk costs $20 just because a dollar isn't worth what it used to be, because there's so much money available. Yeah. It's really that simple.
Yeah, and for all you good folks out there that do proper planning and really understand some of the concepts of leverage, liquidity, and control, if we enter a hyperinflationary environment and some of your buckets are getting guarantees that are tied into being able to take advantage of if inflation comes our way, that's a good example of being on full alert on how to manage your money within and amongst asset classes, but that they're uncorrelated and you're able to really take control and harness your wealth. I think that we have an interesting third quarter ahead of us, right? The election is coming, and put your seatbelts on, folks, because it's about to become a wild ride. If you thought 2020 was wild already, we still have some months left, and I get the impression that it's going to continue to be a wild ride. With that being said, if you're looking for more content, and as we continue to bring out information so you could hear what we're sharing on a daily basis, please hit the subscribe button below and click the link, even though you're supposed to click the link first and then hit the subscribe button.